Things seem tempting, but you need to tread lightly. These things will suck you in, they'll drag you in. It seems kind of too good to be true, so we got to be careful with what we decide to do, right? If our emotions are kind of increasing and becoming overly positive, I feel like it's something that we kind of get sucked into. If you had a past love and you talk to this person, you see this person again, and you can't control your temptations, that should be a warning signal to step back and not to let yourself sink in, because you could be right back to where you were before. Our minds begin to rationalize things. 2, action. Taking action is better than delaying reactions. And, you know, the response is just to be able to clear your mind. The long-term goal is to clear your mind and just do this thing as fast as possible. And I cannot choose what my subconscious wants to choose. So it's we have to act as fast as possible, and as time goes on, it just it almost oxidizes and it gets worse and worse. And then, however our subconscious chooses to interpret that situation and how we view ourselves, that has nothing to do with our cognitive decision. Our subconscious will figure out what it chooses. And on that note, can we control our judgments? Can we control our judgments on people? I came up with this three try behavioral approach, and when we're trying to address behaviors that we don't like from other people, the first thing is letting them know what the behavior you want them to do is. And then the second thing, if they continue to do that behavior, observe and see if they make any attempts to try to do that behavior the way you want it done. Obviously, it needs to be within reason. And the second attempt is, if they do that behavior, the original behavior you don't like, then really thoroughly explaining to them why it's important for you to do that behavior in a manner that is respectful to me and other people around them. And then as time goes on, if they continue to do that, it's almost like beating a dead horse, Are they making efforts? Are they trying? Are they completely ignoring it? Do they have the capacity to change it? These are all things that we got to consider. And in that case, does that draw a bigger picture? Does that squash judgments? And our judgments purely based off assumptions. And we just don't have enough data. So that's kind of a weird concept to think about, and something I thought about a little bit earlier this week. 3, don't assume. Sometimes you just have to take a chance and don't think about it, because worry does nothing but waste time. And you gotta be careful, because if you're wasting time thinking and worrying, it's counterproductive and actually makes it even more difficult to act. And also, you got to be very careful that you don't get sucked into the gravity of reminiscing. And this goes back to number 1, where the temptations with emotions, right? So the temptation of reminiscing is powerful. It can suck you in. It's almost like quicksand. It's a time waster. And what does it do? It puts you back in that spot. It makes you want that again, and it makes you want to live in the past temporarily. So is it really allowing you to grow if you're reminiscing? I know reminiscing sometimes can feel good, but even good things, is it good to spend time reminiscing? Or is it good only to spend time reminiscing on things that are positive? I think of some experiences with friends and family where you laughed. I think in that case, reminiscing is healthy for you. But if it's going to be in a situation where it's going to make you feel weak, it's going to make you feel inadequate, then reminiscing is definitely not worth your time. And I think reminiscing can, I would much rather reflect than reminisce and really utilize kind of the past to help improve me. 4, allow myself to be vulnerable. It's scary out there, and it's okay, you know. The ability to clear your mind when you need to is going to squash the feelings of vulnerability. And being vulnerable, does that automatically mean that you're going to have negative emotions associated with that? Vulnerability just means that you're exposed to attack, exposed to a high risk of an emotional fluctuation depending on how the other person responds to you. And being vulnerable requires action that you're unsure of what the outcome is going to be. If you have a good idea what the outcome is going to be, you're going to be less vulnerable. But if you don't, if it's the first time you're doing something, just testing the waters, yeah, you're going to be vulnerable. But you need to be vulnerable in order to define the lines of what's right and what's not, how to act, and what's acceptable. 5, mastery. Mastery is a wonderful thing. It's gotten me through a lot of things I didn't want to do. When you're not motivated to keep moving, what gets you going? There's a point where motivation no longer is a thing, right? Motivation, somebody gets motivated originally for something, and well, why do they get motivated? Usually it's because it's easy for them, they get a lot of progress in it right off the bat, or they're at a pivotal point in their life where they have to change. So keep it in mind, as you get good at something, it becomes more difficult and it requires more thought and more resources and better and different ideas from different people. So to think of these things when they get hard as you're pursuing mastery is a way to kind of rekindle your motivation to keep moving forward. Because every time I make a mistake when I'm pursuing something I've been pursuing for a while, I just say to myself, you know what? I'm trying to master this. And this takes a lot of errors, a lot of acts of vulnerability to find out what really, really works for me. But the pursuit of mastery is something that's amazing, because everything you think about, everything that you're good at, you spent a lot of time doing it. Everything that you're bad at, how about you compare the amount of time you spent on what you're bad at with what you're good at and see where that kind of brings you. Next, 6. These are things that I've actually learned this week. I'm trying to pull from my notes and trying to just reflect on them. So that's kind of what these numbers are. 6. I've been asking myself some questions before bed, and I've been really trying to observe what is the last thing I remember before I go to sleep. And it's quite interesting because since the last few weeks I've been tracking my dreams and only kind of giving myself about 10 minutes to track my dreams. Previous to that, I stopped tracking my dreams because I was taking too much time. I was taking like 30 minutes, as much time as I needed to track them, because I had a lot of dreams. But since I've been tracking my dreams, it's been easier and easier to kind of be aware of that point before I fall into the dream. It's still not clearly definitive, but I'll get these like trances. I'll go in these like semi-dream states, and they'll almost be like dreams, so it's almost like it's kind of booting up. So I found that interesting, and I find it kind of amazing that if I just kind of ask myself, well, what's the last thing I noticed before I go to sleep? Um, it's amazing what the brain can do. 7, the power of affirmations and the power of words. I just recently finished a book called The 5 Love Languages, and I'm trying to practice words of affirmation. I'm trying to use it on myself. I'm trying to use it on my family, my friends, the people I love, and just other people who need it. And every day I've been kind of utilizing a little bit of time, 5-10 minutes, and just looking up new affirmations and looking up articles on affirmations, and really just committing it to being on my schedule to think about affirmations and learn new affirmations and different ways to say the sort of the same thing, but things that are going to connect with people and identify their strengths, And it's very important because it's words are very powerful. They're very powerful because we understand the definition of words. Some of them have a deep connection within our subconscious and who we are in previous memories, and for somebody it could be the right thing that just needs them. It could be the right thing that just kind of kicks them in the butt and makes them open their eyes and keeps moving forward. So words of affirmation, some people need it, and I'm glad that I'm spending time doing it. Number 9, I'm just trying to be different. And I guess this is a byproduct of trying to be who I want to be, being different. I spend time thinking about this stuff. I spend time reflecting. I spend time figuring out what I learned. I spent time just trying to do things differently, and it's who I am, and I wouldn't be where I am right now if I wasn't different. So the pursuit of being different, it's paying attention to the things that nobody pays attention to. Who pays attention to our emotions? Who pays attention to the way I feel? Who pays attention to the interactions I have with somebody that elicits emotional response in me? Who pays attention to body language when I ask somebody a question? Who pays attention to their own body language when they're talking? I'm just kind of grateful that I have the ability to focus on this stuff, because it's really given me a deeper understanding of life. And I skipped one. I actually skipped 8. I skipped 8. Most recently, with kind of thoughts going around in my head, I've been meditating a lot, almost every day. I didn't meditate today, though. That's an exception to the rule. But most days I meditate anywhere from 10 to 30, maybe even 40 minutes sometimes. But it was interesting. I was laying in bed, and I was like, well, can I just request of myself to clear my mind? People have thoughts rambling around, and they're just like, well, you can't clear my mind. You can't clear my mind. Well, I literally was just like, can I ask myself to clear my mind? And I've never really thought about this before, and I don't know why I haven't thought about this. And I asked myself, well, am I capable of it? And then I did it, and I was like, holy shit, I could do this. That's not that bad, And it wasn't like I had to do a distraction technique, like a 3x3 drill, which is, you look at something, take a big breath in. You look at something else, you take a breath in. And then you look at something else, make sure you name that something, and take a breath in. But I didn't have to do that. And it was pretty damn amazing. And I'm wondering, I was trying it today actually, before I talked to some random people, if I can do it before I talk to them, or if I'm leading up to talking to them. Just ask myself, can I clear my mind? Or can you please clear your mind? Chris, and it's amazing. And it's something that I think that I'm going to practice, and I'm going to see how it goes. So the inability to clear our minds is usually a result of overwhelming amounts of worry. And all that means is usually it stacks up at the end of the night when you're about to go to sleep, and it's floating around your head, and you're worrying about stuff. And when we worry about stuff and when we have emotional responses, that's just our brain prompting us to do something about it, right? If we have a really busy day, we don't have time to think about this stuff. We don't have time to meditate and clear our minds. We don't have time to write down our anxieties, our fears. But if we don't have time for that, when our bodies are quiet and our mind is not doing anything, it's going to come up there because it needs to be resolved. It needs to be at least pulled out in some way, shape, or form and examined. And that's why we worry. We worry because that's our mind communicating to our brain that we need to think about this, and we need to come up with some sort of strategy to help us align our actions with our beliefs. That may require us to define our beliefs. It may require us to change our actions. It may require us to dig deeper and understand why something bothers us. And that may stem from our childhood experiences or our first experiences with that thing. We don't know. Each worry is different. Ten. Being obsessed about something, it masks our ability to be rational. So when we run away from things, when we use other things to cope with other things that we don't address, it prevents us from acting rationally. When you're obsessed with something, that's a recipe for irrationality. So the things that we obsess about, the things that we really, really like, too much of a good thing is a bad thing. Too much of a bad thing is a bad thing. Too much of anything is a bad thing. And when we cannot set clear boundaries on the things that we enjoy doing and our obligations and the things that we need to do, which are facing our fears, this really creates a disconnect and really prevents us from being as rational as possible. And through conversations with people, I could really feel the difference in where people are in that journey, in that stage of self-discovery. And it's because I'm paying attention to myself and other people. And the things that I hear, the all or nothing mentality, mindset, I can feel, I can hear it, I can sense it. And the further we get away from that, the closer we get to self-discovery. Number 11. Is the act of complaining, is this contributing to a deeper cause? Or is this solely driven by ignorance? So when people complain about stuff, if you don't complain about something, is this fixing the deeper issue or contributing to fixing the deeper issue from the top down through actions? Now, I think of this in two ways. If you don't complain, are you suppressing this anger or uneasiness? And is that going to make things worse? Is that going to reinforce just accepting without examining? If you complain about something, but you don't have a solution to it or a strategy, is that contributing to a negative mindset? Or is complaining just an action, and the deeper cause of that complaining, the person is ignorant of? So it's, why do people complain in general? Is it just kind of letting off steam? But it's interesting to think about, well, what actions from the top down will allow the deeper cause to change? I think that if somebody examines why they're complaining about something specifically, usually I would assume it's something beyond their control. Because if it was within their control and you were living honestly, you would do something about it. But complaining, is that a form of adjusting your actions of not responding to align with a belief that changed? So if we were to keep the belief constant and we were not to act, we would be dishonest with ourselves. But does complaining justify our actions? And why would we accept that? I think part of that too is if your beliefs and your values and your priorities are not clearly defined, it's very easy to do that. So that's why clearly defining your values and goals and beliefs, priorities, is very important, because now you have something to compare your actions to. 12. Body language. Am I not being true to my word if my body language is telling a different story? And how do I know that my body language is matching what I'm saying? So this was prompted through a dream for me to ask this question, and I was giving off the body language of being in a rush. But there was a task that I wanted to do, and I did the task. My actions didn't line up with my body language. And the other person there, how did they interpret that? Did they interpret that as me not being honest and true to myself? Did I ignore my word? And was I not being true to my word, if that was the case? So I never really thought about this before, because oftentimes I feel like I'm in a rush, but I will do other things as well. And would that be kind of like lying? And should I try to strive for matching my body language and making that true to what my word is? I probably will, now that I'm aware of it. 13. Through acts of behavior, we figure out what's right or wrong. And the goal is to get as close to that line as we can without being dishonest, without hurting too much, being assertive but not aggressive. And this is hard. This is a hard thing to do, because that's what life is about. Life is about taking little mini risks or leaps of faith to figure out what I have to do to stand up for myself, what I have to do to live an honest life, and to get what I want in life. And what I want in life is to be social. I want to be able to speak up for myself. I want to be able to call out my friends, to help them be aware of these violations that they're committing, But we need to be vulnerable to do that. And throughout life, that's what it's all about. It's finding what my actions are and where that line is, and just kind of define that line, because it could be very, very fuzzy if you don't act. If you live a passive life, it's the fuzziest line in the world, because you're constantly pulling back. You're constantly letting other people step all over you. You're constantly changing your mind to accommodate your behaviors, to feel good about yourself, to feel like you did the right thing, to prevent somebody from getting hurt. But if somebody getting hurt in the process is what is right, and you are trying to live an honest life, somebody needs to get hurt. Now, that's not the intention, that's the potential byproduct. But of course, that it doesn't have to happen that way. 14. How not to judge somebody. We tend to judge people consciously and subconsciously. And when people do things, do we really don't judge them? Can we really say, I don't judge you? I've always lived by this line, give everybody the benefit of the doubt. I've always lived by that. And consciously, it helps, it works, it helps, right? But subconsciously, if somebody is really doing things in a very untrustworthy way, or a very rude and disrespectful way, there's only so much benefit I can give them until the subconscious judgment is so overwhelming that it shows me who that person really is. So that is my reflections for the week. I was going to type these, but I decided to do a video instead. And a lot of this stuff was prompted through my dreams. So what I've been doing is tracking my dreams about 10 minutes every morning. And then when I go to the bathroom, it's kind of like I have like 5 minutes to interpret them. So I'll just write down something really quick that makes sense as to what's going on there. And usually it's an emotionally provoking dream. Most dreams are. And there's always emotion involved in it. And, it's directly correlated with what's going on in my life. And I'm very excited to see what the next week brings. And this week wrapped up pretty nicely, and I made some adjustments on my goals. I have a compliance sheet for a lot of the items that I like to do. I got upwards of 50 things I do every day that are, could be as small as a couple minutes, and could be as long as 30 minutes, maybe an hour. So my goal is to be as efficient as possible and making sure that I'm reading and writing and doing the things that help me figure out life, and not compromising parts of my life that make me happy. And then, making sure that I'm asking myself to clear my mind when I need to, and that I am reminding myself that mastery takes a long time, and that it's not going to be perfect. Perfection isn't what I'm striving for. I'm striving for consistency. Consistency, day in, day out, week in, week out, and then year in, year out. So it's 10 o'clock on Sunday. I'm going to reply to a couple text messages, and then I'm going to sleep. Good night.